Evening and welcome all to the regularly scheduled monthly business meeting of the Planning Commission of the Borough of Gettysburg. Our first item is to review and approve the agenda, and I thought I'd mention a few items on here before we get a motion to approve. We'll begin by asking for any corrections or approval of the minutes. Then there's public comment for items on the agenda. There are then 3 tabled old business items. The first 2, it does not appear we have additional information, so they may remain on the table. The third we do, and we could take action on approving that this evening if the commission desires. Then there are 4 new business items, Gettys Golf, Spectra Kote, Gettysburg Welcome Center, and then the rezoning. It's exciting that on Thursday, the Planning Commission received the draft rezoning. Today, I believe we'll hear a presentation on that and then start to consider how this commission will review it over the coming meetings. And then we'll close with announcements. Are there any corrections to the agenda or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
John moved.
I'll second.
Sarah seconded. Any discussion? Then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And we have an agenda. The next item then is to review and approve the minutes from the April 15th, 2024 meeting. I did not notice any corrections, but did anyone else? Sarah.
I have a couple very minor things.
Go ahead.
Under the review and approve minutes, my name has an H. And under new business, I thought that the first sentence of the second paragraph could use some clarification. I mean, when I read it, I don't quite understand what it's saying. The one that starts with Dominic Piccarelli, the lead designer and engineer for the project, noted that the commission had seen the general plans for the development given prior, so I think maybe a comma, development, given prior special exception reviews and the distributed information. I just thought that maybe needs some, does anyone else have a problem with that sentence?
I do. I'm not an engineer.
Great.
Represent the engineering firm. I am personally not an engineer.
Well, that would be some clarity also. So maybe just,
Yes, we can do. Dominic Piccarelli with KPI Technologies noted that the commission had seen the general plans for the development given that the prior special exception reviews and distributed information. Just we could change it to establish that the Planning Commission had previously seen Gettys Golf. Is this Gettys? Yeah, Gettys Golf with regards to that special exception process back in, what was that, January?
got it.
So that'll just be.
If the solicitor's okay with that. You guys want to do?
Okay. Is everyone okay with that? Any objection? All right. Any other clarification? Or do you have more?
Nope, that's it.
Anyone else? Okay. Is there a motion to approve our minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with those corrections.
Second.
Okay, so Sarah moved and John seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes and the minutes have been accepted. Is there any public comment? Ms. Sipperly.
My comments concern all of the agenda items and the fact that the Planning Commission makes the final decision on development projects, not council. It makes recommendations on zoning amendments for council decisions. During 2024, the members will spend hours reviewing the new rezoning documents and going over them at meetings. So will our new planning director, John Whitmore. Applicants will make presentations and community members will ask questions and make comments. Yet there will be no video record or broadcast of what will be momentous decisions in Gettysburg's land use and economic history. At the April 8th, 2024 council meeting, I pointed out all the pivotal events that will happen during 2024. The people that would benefit from broadcasting, the press, staff, and the creation of a permanent record for the future. I requested that they consider funding Planning Commission broadcasts. The only feedback I got was that maybe in the 2025 budget it could happen, which doesn't do much for 2024. The Pennsylvania Sunshine Act open meetings grants any person attending a meeting of an agency the right to record the proceedings with recording devices, including videotape equipment and personal devices such as cell phones. Conceivably, they could post it online, but how effective would that be? Tonight's broadcasting is being privately funded by people who believe it's important to inform the public, and that the work of the Planning Commission is important and worthy of respect. The video will be on the community media website, but not the borough. And I hope that people will contact their council members and urge them to find the money to broadcast Planning Commission meetings so that local citizens will be informed of decisions that could affect their individual property, uses in their neighborhood like beekeeping and chickens, and the dramatic change of allowing high-rise buildings downtown, thus altering the historic architectural character that our Gettysburg community has preserved for our residents and visitors over 150 years. Thanks for listening. You guys, great.
Thank you, Sue. So we're on camera. And, thanks to the citizens who, I guess, put that together. Is there additional public comment? Okay, then let's move to tabled old business. 0 Hanover Street, no updates here. John?
Staff has not received any additional materials. As we previously discussed, I believe at the last meeting, the continued inaction of the applicant will warrant our department to probably recommend denial at the next meeting unless we receive something. So we'll be reaching out to the firm tomorrow that was involved with the site development plan just to see what's going on, because it's reached a year.
Any questions on that property? Okay, then moving to the library subdivision at Lutheran Seminary.
So the library was waiting for the zoning text amendment to occur, which that was approved at the past council meeting. The library, as in speaking with the, I guess the how do I put, the executive team at the library, I was able to establish that they have anticipating presenting at the June meeting for approval. Their current extension would conclude at the end of June, so if that's not to happen, we'll have information at the next meeting, one way or the other. But they were, as that text amendment has been approved, that was really the hang-up that they were having to proceed with the subdivision aspects of the project.
Great. Any questions on that property? Okay, then 340 Baltimore Street.
So this is the Gettysburg Welcome Center. The land development plan was previously presented in 2023. You would have received the memorandum that's being displayed now from November 27th from Carly, the prior borough planning director. Chad has been involved with this project much longer than I have, but what occurred is we being the borough in conjunction with Main Street, Gettysburg, were able to secure funding through a congressional directed spending. That's the fancy term for earmarks. Basically, that federal grant process will allow for funding for the construction. So now that the funds are in place, time to get the design in place. There's also going to be another issue we talk about a little later in the meeting related to this project. But yeah, the borough at this time is prepared, my understanding is prepared to proceed with the land development plan. There were a few issues that were previously identified with the project. Most all of these are just general notes that you'd put on the actual plans. Chad can provide more direct information regarding the development. Basically, I'll move over to the new site plans that we have here. Let me resize so everyone can see this. One more. There we go. Sorry about this. Let's see if I go smaller. There we go. One more. Page down where you need it. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. This is showing where the building will be located along Baltimore Street. As you can see, the structure will be taking up a large portion of the frontage, going most of the way back to the parcel. Rear of the parcel, this area, you can see there's going to be an accessible space there, traditional parking space there, landscaping buffer between the rear of the building and parking. Parking in particular has been a challenge on this site. There's some engineering concerns related to the built environment. Some historic culverts that required limited development disturbance. The engineer can get into more details, but if you have any specific questions on this, that's pretty much all I have to report.
Before we go to that, what is the motion you expect for this tonight?
Well, this would either be to, we're seeking to be an approval.
Okay.
It's, yeah, that's how I'd put it.
That's
Chad,
fine.
do you have
That's
anything
fine.
else to add, or?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much the only outstanding unresolved item is the zoning matter, which we need to get and it's at what, next week's zoning hearing.
It's on Wednesday.
Or, oh, sorry, that's right. That's because I got another meeting, so I can't be at this Wednesdays. But it's this Wednesday is there's two things. It's the lot size. It requires non-residential use to have a minimum 5,000 square feet. This lot is just under that. It's consistent with all the rest of the lots along Baltimore Street. And then also the solicitor pointed out that technically this should require special exception approval. Is that accurate, John?
Well, special exception or variance related to provisions for the use. It's a little tricky. Is it a government building? Kind of quasi-governmental building. It's not really well defined in the zoning ordinance. Basically, this would allow for the zoning hearing board to make a determination that the use is in keeping with the comprehensive plan and the ordinance.
So later in the meeting, we'll offer our recommendation on that, but at this point, is it appropriate that we could approve a plan and then just expect it to pass, and if it doesn't, obviously our approval doesn't mean anything, or?
Well, you're looking at two different things in the sense that right now you're considering land development approval.
Right.
Based on that plan, and then whether or not you think that it's justifying the variance and special exception. But your point's well made. It's awkward to have a land development approval that you're then recommending the denial of a variance for. But you could do it. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but.
It's atypical, so that putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. I could say in terms of our construction schedule, it wouldn't matter just to wait, because we do not anticipate to go to demo until later, like fall construction season. So if you wanted to wait till next month, I think that would be fine. My only other concern is there is also a chicken and egg thing with the easements that we need from the neighbors. The easements refer to a recording, the deed book page number of the recorded land development plans. We can't do that until we have the plan approved and we have this easements recorded. So that is holding up that one other thing. I still don't know that it matters schedule-wise. John, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If you guys felt more comfortable to table it one more month until we were 100% sure that the zoning hearing pushes it across the goal line tomorrow or Wednesday.
I think your concern, Charles, in part was probably, are you going to recommend approval of a land development plan before you get further down on the agenda? If that's your concern, you could take it out of order if you really wanted to. But I suspect your discussion is going to kind of all mesh together here.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we had envisioned from a staff perspective is that you could conditionally approve this tonight, conditioned on the zoning matter being approved by the zoning hearing board. In which case, if that doesn't happen, that may tank the project. So.
They're two
the
different
end result-
conversations,
yes,
right? They're
they
two
are.
separate conversations. So what does the group think? Should we go with the first one, which is the plan, see how it goes, or should we table this for a month?
I mean, I would be fine. I agree. I wouldn't want to approve something that then later is not correct in the zoning because the zoning hearing board said no. So I would be fine more with the conditional approval that John mentioned, if that's an option. Because I mean, what would happen if we approved something and then it got denied? It'd be in a weird.
It would have no effect.
No
Yeah,
effect.
the result
Okay.
would still be the same.
Well, then,
Well, then
maybe
I
it's
guess
not
that don't
that
really
big of an
matter.
idea.
Yeah.
Does anyone disagree with that, that let's proceed here with the conditional approval? Any objections to that? Okay, then what questions do we have for Chad or for John about the project? We did discuss this a lot last month and the month before, I think.
And essentially, the plan really hasn't changed any. The footprint that you see on the land development plan
Hasn't changed. You may have heard that there is a change with an elevator. I'm gonna call it a glorified lift.
Right.
That only changed the rear of the building on the second floor was actually stepped back. So now that's gonna go out to the same footprint. So it doesn't change the plan, our land development plan any in terms of the footprint. So from two-dimensional
Yeah.
view, you don't see any differences there.
Because there was a patio plan there or something?
There's still going to be a porch, it's just going to have building out over top of it now, where on the one side, so it's just, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But essentially, like I said, it's the same land development plan, like John said, it does have two phases. You see the plan's there twice, and the reason why is because we have to keep that underground culvert there. We can't put a parking on top of that until that's removed, so I did explain that to you guys in the past. That condition hasn't changed any. We cleaned up the stormwater a little bit, some of the notes on the plan from Carly's review. But it's essentially the same land development plan that you guys seen now a couple times, and we've just been kind of waiting until we get close to the zoning hearing.
Any questions for Chad?
So I'm trying to remember how this typically occurs. I mean, the plan date is October, and then the comments from Carly and the county planning officer in November. But some of them they're all pretty minor, but you haven't updated the plan to reflect any of those.
Yes, I have. It's just an old date.
Oh, okay, so, because I was looking for the, I I guess you wouldn't
Yeah,
note
that's a.
changes until it's been, it's to
I
a
don't know
final
if you
version?
can see, if you go to page 2 or any of the subsequent pages, and you look at the title block at the bottom right, you see the date 4/12/2024.
Okay,
I just
got it. So there is.
failed to change the October on the title sheet. Now
Got
that
it.
you mentioned that, I see what you're saying.
Okay, so this is actually updated since,
And, yeah,
and shows
in
those
April.
corrections.
Yeah, last month.
Got it. Thanks.
And one of the ways, it's a really minor little item, but I can point it out to you on any of the sheets. There's a 4-inch roof leader that comes off the back, and we revised the way that we're tying that into that abandoned culvert pipe. It's a diagonal line, it's the roof leader that comes into that. We were concerned about how close the rear of the building is getting to the foundation of there's two underground pipes. There's one's an 8-foot pipe and there's one's a 4-foot pipe. The 4-foot pipe is actually really close to our building. We were concerned about that, so we're gonna demolish that as part of the demo and change how we're routing our stormwater roof leaders. So that's one of the things that I know that kind of got changed here this spring. That's why I know it's the revised plan.
Okay. And wasn't this the project that, Marty, you had some questions about the landscaping proposals?
Were you able to get
I
a
just
chance?
want to know if that was.
I sent an email I don't know, maybe a month ago now between you and Jason Wolf. Were you guys
Right,
able to
and
connect at all?
I
Or?
responded that night and just said what I thought,
And he hasn't followed up with you yet? Okay.
No. I mean, a lot of these landscape plans, honestly, they get torn out or they die. I'll give you the McDonald's. McDonald's had actually a pretty nice landscape plan, and it is just barren now, currently. If you go around the borough, a lot of these plans just aren't maintained. I wish we could review them at some time. talk to Carly about looking at them. I'd be happy to review them, but if you want to go with the landscape plan, I'm totally fine with that. You guys will figure it out, I'm sure. If it fails, somebody will want to plant something there. So
The bottom line with our landscaping plan is that we're putting in a couple more units than what we need. We didn't want to, the borough didn't want to have any grass to mow, essentially. So the whole thing's getting planted. There's shrubs the way along that northern side, and then that whole backyard, that little grass area is just nothing but plants. So we exceed the number of units, it's just more because we wanted to cover it with mulch and plants and not grass that there would be a little tiny, you see all of the plants that are getting put in, it'd be a little tiny grass area that just wouldn't make sense to try to mow.
in terms of the phasing, could you run that by us again? I just don't see why it's not all done in one phase. Why does that have to be a?
So that,
second
so you can
phase?
see where it says the mulch bed, it's that diagonal underground culvert. That's an old masonry culvert. We had our structural engineers actually crawled through it. I have photos and stuff of them crawling through there and doing an analysis on it. They're old masonry walls that are like from the 1800s, and then it's got a concrete slab on the top. The concrete slab's not in bad shape. It's the masonry walls that are holding the concrete slab that aren't in great shape. They're undermining and getting ready to fall in. So they're afraid of anyone parking on that. So if you can go down to the next view, you'll see in the second, or up maybe.
This is the first one.
Yeah, so there, right, so you can see those parking spaces are on top of that culvert pipe, and you can't park on it. So we can't install the parking spaces as part of the first phase.
So you're not going to have any heavy machinery driving over that culvert?
We're gonna have to steel plate it. We're gonna steel plate the culvert whenever the heavy machinery is coming over it to bridge it further. Yep.
I mean, I would just fill it in first, but I don't know.
Well, the problem is you can't just, that takes all of the water. So I'll try to describe this. Do you know where in the back of Appalachian Brewing Company, that parking lot, it's a swale back there, that's where that drainage area starts. And it all comes down through behind the well span there, behind Dobbin House. All of that drainage area comes through this culvert, through the Fawnsworth. It's a significant drainage area. And then additionally, everything out Baltimore Street to the top of the hill where the water tower is and the Gettysburg Tourist Center is, all of that water comes to the bottom of the hill and goes through the same culvert. To make the revision to that, to move that somewhere different, we have plans to do it with our Baltimore Street project. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not sure exactly the price tag for it, but it's a pretty significant analysis and a revision to the piping system in order to be able to remove that. It's not something that the borough's ready to take on right now.
I see.
So the plan is to get this phase one done so the Welcome Center can get built, and then as part of the Gateway Connectivity Project, we would have that design done and then see if that can fit. When we resubmitted, you may know that we've submitted a RAISE grant application for the funding of that. We've altered the price tag for that RAISE grant to include money for that culvert with this latest grant application. So should we be lucky enough to get that grant, then we would have funds to actually do that. But the reality is we're probably looking at 2 years down the road until the design's done, until we're ready to, we're looking at 2027 construction at best to start that project. So essentially we need to have first phase, the Welcome Centers are getting ready to be constructed this fall, or groundbreaking maybe in January 1st is what we're shooting for. So it's just out of order in sequence in terms of the scheduling and the timing of it. You're right, best case scenario, I mean, the perfect world, we would eliminate that first and then just go right to phase two here, but the timing isn't working out.
Thank you. I'm sorry to.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, it's a good question.
So if there are not any more questions, we are able to have a motion here for 340 Baltimore Street, a land development approval for the Gettysburg Welcome Center. Does anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make it.
Okay, so John moves for the approval of this land development plan conditioned on the special exception or variance from the zoning hearing board. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so John moved, Nick seconded. Is there additional discussion about this? Okay, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? And that motion passes. Let's move to new business. The first is 533 Steinwehr Avenue, Gettys Golf. Do you want to move up here, or are you okay there?
I can talk loud enough.
Okay, all right.
We got comments, you've seen the plan, you can put it up. Really, we just wanted, for today, because we didn't make any of the changes yet, we just wanted to get an answer for the modification that we requested, and then a couple other questions, assuming then you'll table the plan. I mean, and if you have any questions for us, obviously. Assuming you'll table a plan, and then hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we'll resubmit and be ready for next month's meeting.
Great, thank you.
I don't know if you wanted me to.
Well, let's see, John or Chad, we have those comments that will be reviewed by the applicant, but do you have any further discussion about that?
No, once again, most of the comments that I was able, well, comments from me are mostly going to be generally the ticky-tack stuff regarding the site plan that can be edited. There weren't any necessarily design issues. There is a question, though, about Johns Avenue sidewalk and land, like the buffering required for that from the parking area. That's I guess, the stickler items that really came out in my review. The applicant, and this is something we're going to, if the planning commission is in agreement, we have similar agreements for landowners along Steinwehr, where if in the event that the Johns Avenue sidewalk is to be constructed, at that point, the applicant would then be required to also improve their sidewalk. The problem with this scenario for this development is that you'd have 3 patches of sidewalk that are going nowhere and really don't benefit anything until the future network is fully developed, or at least more developed. Alternatively, it's pretty well understood that Steinwehr is going to be the main the pedestrian focus along Steinwehr is greater than Johns Avenue, clearly. The making sure that the interaction between that residential zone is something that probably should be addressed. How the planning commission wishes to do that, that's, I guess, something for discussion.
Okay, so maybe we should start that. So what I understand is you gave us comments on the 16th. We have the county comments from the 9th, and we have, Chad, your comments from the 14th, and they have not yet made those changes.
Correct.
So we have until July 14th, right? With the
Yes.
July 14th. So and you are all okay if we did table this until June?
Yeah, I anticipate you will.
Okay.
Like I said, there was a couple of these issues that came in these comments I'd like to talk about, get some clarity.
Okay, so let's do that.
Most of this stuff I think is pretty straightforward. Add this note, change this, whatever. Next month we'd probably expect or hope to expect to get conditional approval. Did you just want to go over my?
Yeah, is that okay if he just
Yeah,
tells
and
us what to do?
Out of my comments, I have 9 of them circled that I would like to touch on. They're maybe the same things. So I'll let Dominique go first, and then we'll.
Sounds good.
I figured the waiver request or the modification for the planning units as it relates to Steinwehr Avenue. As I discussed last meeting, ideally, maybe it's more of a policy issue, I would say. Like maybe your ordinance should be everything stay same except with parentheses, except anybody fronting Steinwehr. And as I said before, 20 couple years ago, the borough, all the businesses and stuff, everybody got together to design it all. It almost feels like you're double dipping, making us do landscaping all requirements for something that was planned for by the borough. And that was just our thought process.
Okay, let's start with that one. John, do you want to respond first? Or Chad? or do you want us to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, I understand Dominic's point. There's two street trees on Steinwehr Avenue. It was a streetscape, decorative streetscape. So I think part of the intent of why we do ask for planting units along the streets is for that buffer thing. In this case, it's maybe not quite as needed. I understand the request, I guess. So I don't know if I have a whole lot more to add to the argument from the applicant.
Marty?
Now, that doesn't mean that I'm okay with just all of the landscaping. I have some other things that I want to talk about with
Yeah, right.
landscaping for the whole plan, but he's specifically talking about the landscaping along Steinwehr Avenue.
Yeah, the way the ordinance is written, it's interesting. It goes back and forth between residential areas and commercial areas. So if you read the residential area, it says to plant the tree in between the in between the sidewalk and the house, preferably 10 feet back. So that is specifically supposed to be a street tree. For commercial, it just is part of the total number of planting units. They don't have to be planted as street trees or along the street. It's just to, I guess, following the same lines. Yes, you would want to create a sort of prospect or refuge with the canopy of a tree against the building, soften the edges, things of that nature. But they are showing a good number of trees. You got a good ginkgo on site that I don't know if you want to hang on to, but it seems like it's doing all right.
I think if we could and utilize it, and it save us a unit that they have to, I'm not even in favor of cutting down tree to plant a tree. If we could save it, obviously.
It's sort of ground right in the corner. I don't see why you couldn't. It's up to you.
So it sounds like, Marty, you're okay with what they're suggesting here.
I mean, they're saying that, what, you want to get rid of the maples, all of them there?
No, what we're saying is when this actually gets built, this is our biggest fear. We already have, I think, about 3 extra planting units shown.
Sure.
We're afraid when this gets built, and there's a couple areas we have to put pumps in for the waterfalls, that when it gets built and Nate looks out there, or his wife or whatever, and they go, I really don't want that tree there. Can we get rid of it and put a bush there? That we don't have to run back to you and say, we want to take off, because we feel like we've done everything, buffered around the parking, have all the inner aisles and everything. We have a lot of landscaping in the putt-putt area. We don't show any bushes, and we know bushes are going to be there. It's just part of the nature of that business. We just don't want something when we're building it and they're looking, they say, oh, that blocks our view to that hole. Let's not put that tree there. Now I have to come to you and say, we didn't want this tree, we wanted a bush. So that's one of, that's our thought process. The other thought was, again, Steinwehr Avenue. And when asking for this modification for not requiring it on Steinwehr, we're not even asking for those 2 trees taking credit for them. If we don't get this modification, we will take credit for the 2 street trees that are out there as we're allowed to. But we figure, we're not going to double dip on you. We're asking you not to double dip on us.
Is there any objection to just sharing that we are okay with this modification?
You're talking about how many units there? It would be 20 feet.
6. I think it's 110 feet on Steinwehr Avenue. John, if you could scroll up a little bit, it would say. But I think it's 110 feet on Steinwehr Avenue, which would be 1 for every 20 feet, so plus a fraction thereof, so it would be 6. That's wrong. John's and Steinwehr should be reversed. That'll get changed. But it's 110 feet, Steinwehr, 6 planting units.
So I want to make sure I understand the modification request. The request is for the total number of units, not specific to the Steinwehr Avenue trees.
Well, no, it would be not specific to the trees. It's specific to Steinwehr Avenue itself. feeling Steinwehr Avenue has already been, all this has already been taken into consideration. I mean, besides just trees, parking, driveways, garbage cans, we have them all there. We have lights, poles, garbage cans, we got it all on this property. But it was all taken care of, from Baltimore Street up to John's. Steinwehr Avenue was planned on both sides for everything. It just seems odd that now we're using Steinwehr Avenue to make us do additional work, whether it was landscaping or anything else. I think we'd ask for that.
So are you suggesting, are those ARs along Steinwehr, are you saying that you would like to eliminate those, or you want to keep those?
No. I'm not
Okay.
saying anything
You're
necessarily
just saying
will
using
change.
Steinwehr as a
Yeah, that's-
calculating.
Right. So then
for
this
calculating
way,
the
when
number.
it would be done, it would still show probably the 35.7, but the required would be down to 26. So this way, again, if something moves in the future, we don't have to come back here.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking your goal was to eliminate those ARs along Steinwehr, and that's not necessarily the
No,
case.
the ARs are gonna stay there except for actually the two that block the driveway.
Right,
They're gonna
the two
move
driveways.
to Johns Avenue, because I know we need street trees there. We're gonna move them to Johns Avenue. And then probably at each corner, and then in the center, based on comments, we're gonna add some shrubs in the center one, in between the two driveways. And I think that's part of what we're gonna discuss, maybe in a little bit, about this buffer yard that we're supposed to have, where we're doing our best, it's existing, and we provided buffering around almost everything already.
Okay, then I'll ask again, does anyone object to sharing that we're okay with this modification?
So I'm actually just sorry, a little confused on what the specific language of the modification being asked for is. Like, are we just reducing the total number of units that are needed? And
Basically,
and
yes.
specifically saying that we're okay not have, I know there's language in there about Steinwehr, so we're saying that we're okay with not kind of ignoring the language about Steinwehr specifically and reducing the total number of units.
It's ultimately it'll reduce the units, but the waiver request is that you not enforce that one planning unit per 20 feet of road frontage specifically to Steinwehr Avenue
Okay.
in this plan. I think that was the modification request. It's not a total number, it's just don't enforce Steinwehr Avenue's 1 unit per 20 feet.
Yeah, if you zoom in, John, to a little bit up to the right.
Right here?
No, up further, yeah, and a little bit further to your right, that table right there, keep going, yeah, right there. So the ordinance requires 1 unit per 20 linear feet of street, so whenever you put in John's, there's 6 units, Steinwehr is another 9. So he's suggesting.
Yeah, they're flipping.
Yeah, those two are flat, right, so he's saying that he wants to just strike the Steinwehr linear foot calculating of the total number of units.
And is this a need for a formal motion to grant a waiver, or is this to just give you feedback for next month?
It would be a
Yeah.
formal because I
At this meeting.
actually submitted the modification request.
Oh,
Either, I mean,
Yeah.
preferably it's at the time you're making the motion to either approve or not. Approve the plan, you would do the modification then.
so,
I think you're giving a sense of where you're at.
right, that's what I thought. So we're just sharing that it sounds like that's what we're going to do for next month.
Okay, so I guess a straw.
Well, that's why I'll ask again. Well, are there any more questions about this?
I mean, because we have to make changes one way or the other, I just need to know what changes.
Any objections? Sarah's saying no. Nick?
I mean, I generally agree with the idea of what you're saying, like Steinwehr, I mean, I'm looking at the street view on Google Maps, and yeah, it's like, got the light there, they got the 2 planning units, I get that part. I was just kind of, I didn't know what it meant for the total plan, but I don't personally have an objection.
I don't have any objections either. John? No, none from John. Marty?
No, just get the SADO 22, what is it, the specific name of the ordinance you want to get the waiver from, and 22103A1, I believe.
Yeah, I thought I submitted the right.
Yeah, and on the title sheet of the plan, there's a modification request note. It references 221103-3A. quantity of landscaping. It's in the center bottom of the title sheet.
Thank you for that.
I was looking for that, yeah.
Maybe really quick, John, if we put bushes in that center existing
In this island?
grass, will that satisfy the buffer requirement from residential to commercial?
So I'll bring that up for the commission, one moment. All right, so it's actually, there's quite a bit of, not necessarily conflicting, but it's progressively larger requirements for buffer yards. Yeah, because it starts off from a zoning ordinance compliance, you have a 5 foot wide in commercial or industrial area along, the 2 districts. But then there's another one. I thought there was another one. I have to find it. And with any regard, it would, if by putting the plantings in that area, it would meet the 5 foot requirement. I mean, it is not shown on the plan. That's the issue staff has with it. So with it being on the plan, then that would correct that note.
Then we'll add some bushes into that section.
Yeah, because it doesn't necessarily require specific planting types. It just says there should be buffering.
Okay, so that satisfies that?
There- let's see. I know there was mention about dumpsters, just as an FYI. We don't plan on having a dumpster. We don't feel we're going to generate that much garbage. Probably just have a can and a can for recycling. The most they're going to have is a soda machine and pieces of paper to keep your score on.
I can respond to that. So in the plan, it shows a dumpster pad.
Oh, that's not our problem.
That's KFC.
Okay, that explains it then.
All right, good. You don't have to screen their dumpster.
Yeah.
That'll work. And then, on Chad's comment, specifically number 9, would you be okay if I asked for a modification of that? Because it just says approximate locations of adjacent structures. We all know all we have is KFC and McDonald's. Everything else is basically grass around us. And it's asking for approximate locations. I really don't want to send my surveyor out there spending all this time and money for approximate locations. Or is there something you would allow us to do otherwise?
You said, what number? Comment number 9 is about.
5. I'm sorry, 5.
Yeah, it's the approximate location of adjacent structures within 200 feet of the site need to be provided in the plan. That's what the report ordinance requires. So as long as you guys are okay, I mean, I don't know that I have any major objections to the request. If there was something of significance surrounding this property that could be impacted by the development, then maybe we'd have more of a concern, but I'm not sure that that's the case, so. If you guys don't have any objections to it, I don't necessarily have any objections to it. So either show it or request the modification.
I didn't ask formally, but I'll request a modification next time, if you're okay with it. If not, then again, I need to.
Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
No objection? Okay. And so you'll just add that to the front of the
Yeah,
plan?
when we submit the revised plan, we'll add that note on. Which brings me to number 9, specifically 9B. We had a submitting meeting with John and all to talk about parking and some other things. One specifically the sidewalk, not putting it in, putting that note on there. Everybody seemed okay with that. Do we have to submit a modification for that? Because I know you said it, but John didn't. I just want to make sure if we have to do it, that's fine. If we don't, I don't know.
I feel like it's still a modification. It's not a waiver of the requirement. I feel like it's still a modification of the requirement to build sidewalks.
Then I guess I'm going to ask for Do you concur that we can put the note on that says we'll build the sidewalks if anybody else around us basically builds sidewalks?
Do you think we should do?
Yeah, that was part of John's opening remarks. We did the similar thing at the rear of the Best Western. If you look at the parking lot of the Best Western, there's just a line of shrubs there to kind of buffer the parking lot and no sidewalk. It would essentially, what this comes down to, because McDonald's didn't make this request, so they actually just put in the sidewalk. They probably would have gotten a waiver if they would have asked for the request, but they didn't do it. But it really comes down to the laundromat doesn't have sidewalks there. So really for this to be connected, because it's not likely that sidewalks are ever going to get built too much further to the east. We have now National Park Service property is everything to the east of this, south of this.
General
So
pickets beyond.
Yeah, it would take a land development plan to the laundromat for this to ever
Yeah.
need sidewalks in the back. So typically, it's a typical thing, every municipality does it, where they'll make a modification and they'll just put a note on the plan that within so many days of notice by the municipality that they gotta add sidewalks.
So if they were to request any type of land change, it would kind of trigger both. They would have to build a sidewalk, and then this property would have to build a sidewalk to extend that McDonald's one.
Yeah, at that point, if like, for instance, let's just say that the laundromat went through land development, it would trigger most likely this one, and then at that point, should be talking about the Best Western, would be the next one down.
Okay.
Okay.
I seem to remember the Best Western had 2 residents on Johns Avenue, or Johns,
Across the street.
requesting that no sidewalk be
Right.
put
There
on
is sidewalk in Johns that goes all the way
on the other
down to
side.
Long, all the way
Yeah.
down.
But this argument makes sense to me. Are there any objections to this third modification? Okay, sounds good.
Thank you for that. Really, I think everything else we can make the changes to. I guess you had a couple other things, or does anybody else have anything else?
Well, why doesn't Chad go next?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. So number 2 and 3 on my list kind of go together, and I wanted to just discuss that when we're talking about modifications. This may end up being another one that you be looking at. There is not very many public improvements with this property. Typically so the municipality's planning code requires developments to submit a financial security for public improvements, and whenever there is very limited public improvements, that's something that's typically waived by the borough. You end up putting more time and money into the process of bonding these public improvements, or they call them common improvements in the MPC. In this case, the common improvements is going to be your landscaping. Most likely sidewalks are going to get waived, it sounds like, so that the only other common improvement would be some paving in the right-of-way out at Johns Avenue, wherever the entrance is going to be. It's insignificant, so I wanted to mention that, because the way that I worded the comment here is that the ordinance requires the posting of it. I would say the alternative is a waiver or modification request of that ordinance requirement. So maybe I'll pause there if they would request that modification.
Absolutely. We'll request that.
Okay, any objections to that?
Are there any stormwater items that might be bonded or?
Insignificant, because the ordinance says that they can take credit for any impervious area since the date of the ordinance, and of course we all know this was a Hardy, so they were able to provide documentation to show that the whole site was paved. It's actually got a significant reduction in the amount of impervious area from whenever this was the Hardy. So the stormwater management is really limited to a little bit of E&S during construction, and then just conveyance off the property. There's no management per se, no rate or volume control management. So it's really limited, the number of, the amount of public improvements that would be associated with it. And number 2 goes back to the developer's agreement. These things kind of go hand in hand. If you have financial security, then that gets listed and added as an attachment to the development agreement. I think that we would still have the development agreement though. So anything that we had in public improvements, we could always say in the agreement that they agree to build these things. For instance, the landscaping. That's going to be really what it comes down to.
That I do have a concern there, just because we've talked about a couple of properties that we've seen not do the landscaping. Like that we've, they were approved with their plan, they were approved to have it, there was supposed to be land, trees, bushes, stuffs, like, I ride my bike past High Street Brews every day, and it's just, blank dirt. So I don't know, and it's not an offense to you guys, but I think we've been thinking as a planning commission, is there anything we can do to be more enforceable on that when properties don't, follow through with the plan that was approved? And I don't know if this financial security is the way to do that.
So we can enforce that they put in those plans, and just so you know that we've been in pretty constant contact with them over a couple of years now. They just had some issues with the landscaping plan that was originally proposed, and they couldn't get any of the plans, and then they had to come up with a different one. So I think we're going to have a conversation on that. There's a new landscaping plan that was provided to us within the past month. They do intend to still do that, and if they wouldn't do that, there would be a violation of their land development plan and their land development agreement. So I would say that there's some enforcement action that the municipality could take outside of the holding the money, the dollars.
Yeah, if I could just jump in real quick, if you see instances where you're aware of previously approved either site plan work that has come before you that didn't work, something that we may have missed, please email us. We can bring it to our code enforcement officer's attention, and then we can proceed with an investigation and action to correct the issue.
I should note too, with bonding for something like landscaping, if the stuff dies and the money's been released, you're back to the situation Chad described. It's leverage to get it planted, but once the money's released and the bond's gone, that leverage is gone too.
That makes sense.
And Solicitor Boyer can
I'm just
provide a
adding.
better example to the finances involved with public improvement security. But if we actually had to try to cash them in and go through the legal battle of doing that, it would end up costing the borough more money than what it was worth for such a small public improvements. Those are usually reserved for things like when you're building a brand new street in a 100-lot subdivision or something like that. That's where it is appropriate. So I just wanted to mention that. Number 7. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Can I get a straw poll on that?
Oh, I thought we did.
Yeah, I
Any
think we did
objections? I think we did, but any objections to that?
Okay,
Great.
Sure.
Yep.
Number 7 is about the overhead utilities. I just wanted to stop on that to see if you had any concerns with that, Dominic. There is some overhead utility lines that cross the property. We would prefer to see some type of an agreement or something, or see your proposed building is underneath of that line. So if they say that you can't do that, then you're stuck with moving your building.
Under deeds and what we've researched, there is no right-of-way associated with that line.
Okay.
I know his attorney looked into it as well as our, there is no right-of-way associated with it. The closest thing we get, and I think it was the McDonald's plan, maybe not, maybe it had to be McDonald's plan. They put something on that plan that said, we'll give the right-of-way because it was probably easy for them to do it because there was no building proposed there. But we can't find no easement. So
would you be willing to provide the same easement like McDonald's did? Or right of way?
as long as we keep the building where it is. If we have to move that building, it changes the whole design of the entire. We built in, if you could go, if you don't mind, John,
Yeah.
if you could go down. We built in a little wiggle room, and I'm only talking maybe a foot or two. We put a 5-foot sidewalk around the whole area except for the front. That's probably about 7 or 8 feet. So we have the little wiggle room. It's not directly under the line. We can move the clubhouse up a little bit further, not much, maybe a foot or two. If you want us to do that and then give them a right-of-way up to the building, I don't think that would be an issue.
Yeah, I think that would be better than nothing. So the E/T, can everyone see that on the plan that's running vertical down the middle of the plan?
Yes.
That's the overhead electric line that it's I would consider that a public line because it serves both of the neighbors. So for instance, if the property owner here went out there and tried to cut that pole down or cut that line, they would put their neighbors out of power. So that has to stay there for the neighbors. There would be other PUC regulations that kind of govern this as well. But typically you see something whenever there is a utility like that that's for the general common good or public utility, there is an easement associated with it. It is a thing that a lot of times these are really old gentleman's handshake type things, and we can't find easements on it. In that case, what I typically say is let's correct that by providing an easement. Tie goes to the runner in this case. If there's no easement, then they can show it how they want to. I think it's something that the borough should still ask for some type of an easement, just to protect the neighbor's interests. But I don't know if I have any objections to an amended. It doesn't have to be the full 20-foot easement that you would normally see by Med-Ed if there's nothing that exists on record. So.
Yeah, like I said, we'll push up the clubhouse closer towards Steinwehr. Keep the 5 foot, because that's usually a commercial, what you want the sidewalk around. We'll end up just having a thicker area back by the handicap parking space. And then we'll give you up to that point. I don't know exactly, it might only be 8 feet on that side. We could give you the 10 feet on the other side. We might only be able to give you 7, 8 feet on that side, just right up to our building.
Makes sense to me. Okay. Number 9, we talked about a little bit. We talked about 9B for the modification request for the sidewalks. I wanted to talk about 9A. If we could go to sheet C3, John. There was 2 notes, and we were recommending that the second note on that sheet be eliminated.
On C3?
I think you need to go to the left.
On the bottom left.
Yeah, I'm only seeing the one note.
I'm sorry, not the second note, the second, where is the second?
Second sentence.
Second sentence.
Okay.
So from this notification, were you talking commonly known as? That's a comma, I think.
Yeah, so that line, that comment there says it's, that makes it specific to when one parcel adds a sidewalk. My question is, do we want to, I guess, pin the borough down to just whenever that one parcel, if that one parcel, that's saying if that one parcel there adds sidewalks, then this one also has to. But do we want to leave it more open-ended, saying, hey, at any time that we want to put sidewalks through here, we should be able to?
We don't care. I mean, we won't. If you want us to take away that second sentence, we will. We probably should have put the American battlefield. I think we all just assume the American battlefield's going to be grass, and
There's a good chance that never happens. But it seems like it's pinning you down to one very specific thing, you know what I mean? So if you guys are okay with eliminating that
we'll
sentence.
take that off. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Number 10, it's a continuation of the discussion with the financial security. And I was suggesting there that if we have a development agreement, we could also include in that development agreement this modification with the proposed sidewalks. It's just a belts and suspenders thing. Number 17 is one we already talked about, it's refuse collection. I had that circled. So I think I'm satisfied with the fact that the answer to that question is there isn't going to be a dumpster. If there was going to be a dumpster, then I would have the question or the comment about screening. 18 was about the planning units, and I said there on A1 that we didn't have any objection. We already talked about that one for the modification along Steinwehr. And I did want to mention again here is 18A2, that we also made a comment, like John, about installation of planning units along Johns Avenue. We referenced 2 sections in the Saldo there where It does want to have buffers along residential zones. And then finally, two more. General comment number 2, the applicant shall revise landscaping plan for consistency. There was some labels on there, and I just wanted to mention that because I was confused when I was counting up the total number that we were looking at for the modifications. I want to make sure that that's all cleaned up. I don't know that we need to stop on that right now. I just want to mention that. And finally, zoning comment number 5. So we have these conversations at our zoning rewrite meeting on our old strategy was that there was a minimum number of parking spaces. And what you know now with planning is that that isn't necessarily good planning in places like the Borough, where we're just designing for Black Friday and we have these seas of parking everywhere. We tear down buildings to put in parking lots. So the new strategy has the maximum number of parking spaces. So we started talking about what is the appropriate number of parking spaces. I argue that a lot of times the applicant knows best. You know, and I use Dollar General. They know exactly how many people come in and out, and it's just, they're really good at it. They know how many spaces that they need to have. So I was suggesting that the applicant should provide a parking report to show that the number of spaces that they're providing is good enough. They can have some overflow on the Johns, but what we don't want is all of a sudden to say, hey, we're gonna line all of Johns Avenue with cars, and then the residences there would be upset that they're gonna have all these cars parked. I don't anticipate that being the case. Having something in the documentation that shows that would be perfect.
Yeah, that was my error. I said before, I had a pre-submittal meeting with John. I provided him a parking report. Since that meeting, originally we went with outdoor recreation. Since that meeting, I actually found 2 local ordinances, Highland and Liberty, that actually has mini golf courses. And when we had discussion with John, that we felt 17 was good. He, I think, agreed. And then I'm just giving you as the updated parking report, which according to, we use the neighboring ordinances, they would require not 11 spaces. So again, we're satisfied with 17. I think John's satisfied with 17. So,
That's all I have.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions by the planning commission? Okay, well, after all of that, we need a motion to table until June 17th. Is there a motion to table this until June 17th, our next meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so John moved and Marty seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes, and we'll see you next month. Thank you for all of that.
can I ask just one question? Because I know it was just brought up about High Street brews and the resubmittal landscaping plan that I did. I'm not sure, is that going to be discussed here? Should I stick around for that?
Not at this meeting. I'll be
That's
in
perfectly
contact
fine,
with you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Okay, our next item is 301 East Water Street, Spectra Kote, and we have a final land development plan from them, and I think our decision here is whether we accept this plan for review. Before we do that, any comments from John or Chad about this plan?
The applicant has indicated that they would not be present today. I do not see them. Generally, as you all may be aware, my practice hasn't really been in Pennsylvania. This is one of the nuances of the municipality's planning code, is having non-residential or multifamily residential come before you for these site development plans. Basically, what's being proposed is, in addition to an existing industrial site, it's pretty, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and it's not exactly revolutionary what's being proposed. I didn't see anything that would warrant this to not be considered.
And then they don't ask for any modifications or waivers or anything on this?
That's correct.
I didn't see any. Okay.
It's just part of the process.
So would anyone wish to move to accept this plan for review, given what John just said?
I'll move to accept the Spectra code plan for review.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so Marty moved and John seconded. Any discussion about this? Do you anticipate that, next month or
Yes,
it'll be
yeah.
here?
Yeah, I mean, I forget the Landworks, yeah, the Landworks and the ownership team should be present at the next meeting to address any specific concerns. Assuming it's accepted this evening, we'll be able to then have additional comments, but as you can see, the area where there's the red rectangle, that's where all of the action is happening with this plan.
All right, then all those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye, opposed? And this motion passes. Our next item is 340 Baltimore Street, back to the Welcome Center, this time to make a recommendation to the zoning hearing board.
Okay, so copy of a memorandum was sent in the packet from May 22nd. Basically, the timeline as provided, generally, we are on track to have this before the zoning hearing board, we being the borough, on track to have it on the Wednesday's agenda. The borough solicitor has suggested a course where there is, going for all approvals as would be feasible. In particular, the zoning ordinance doesn't really define a welcome center. It does have government buildings, it doesn't define those, but it is identified as permitted use. This is another reason why the rezoning effort is very, very much needed. But the nuance of that is basically what the Planning Commission is being asked for tonight is to provide a recommendation to the zoning hearing board if the use of the building is appropriate for the RO residential office district on Baltimore Street. Secondary, there is a provision where to develop on properties in the RO district, for non-residential uses, they have to be 5,000 square feet in area. This parcel is 1/10 of an acre. It does not meet that 5,000 square feet. There is a provision in the non-conforming lots section of the zoning ordinance that grants the zoning hearing board a very unique power. They have the ability to provide an approval for development on substandard area lots with review of the development plan. So that's kind of like a special exception as well. That's just, the borough is just seeking a recommendation to be able to build this thing. How that's permitted with the non-conforming lots, in most jurisdictions, this would be considered a lot of record, and since it already exists, you have the right to develop it. We just have the extra provision where you have to go before the zoning hearing board to have that additional blessing to be able to develop the property.
And then the third one, or is that what?
So special
Yeah.
exception for the use, a variance. Oh, actually, make sure I'm saying this correctly, because it's been tricky. So special exception per section 27803E, variance per section 27804.2, and then the that quasi special exception under the non-conforming provisions in 1403.1. So, yeah, the 803E, that's a special exception, 804.2. It's a variance from that, but it's not necessarily a variance because there is that secondary provision for the quasi-special exception for the zoning hearing board to permit.
Okay.
So,
All right,
we're
let's-
asking, the borough is asking for a lot of different things for this, but the overall is, A, can you develop a welcome center? B, can you develop it on this parcel that is less than 5,000 square feet?
Let's start with A first. Are there any objections to that proposal to allow this use?
I think it
I don't
fits
know.
the character of that
Yeah.
area.
I think it is a government building to me, in my mind. government owns it, right? Okay, so then, without objection, our first recommendation, well, should we make this as a motion?
If you want to break them up, you can, or if you want to take them as a group, whichever you think is appropriate.
Let's just do them one at a time. So is there a motion to recommend this use? Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right, so John moved and Sarah seconded to recommend to the zoning hearing board that this welcome center fits the use of the RO district. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Now, B has to do with the 5,000 square foot and more.
So, yeah, so would a variance be appropriate? So you'd be making a recommendation for the variance, or if the solicitor's okay with this, allowing for just the recommendation that the site can be developed, even though it does not meet the 5,000 square foot requirement.
Let me phrase it that way.
Yeah, so your first one that you just did was, and I think you had said use, but you meant character. I
Character,
believe. Is
yeah,
it the
yes.
same general character as that area and zoning district? In this case, you're recommending whether or not they grant a variance to allow for the development of the lot, essentially when it's too small.
Okay. So
Slightly too small.
does anyone wish to recommend to the zoning hearing board a variance to permit development on this property parcel?
So moved.
Not non-residential.
Non-residential. All right, Sarah moves
Second.
and John seconds. Is there any discussion on this one? Or any clarification on what we're voting on? Okay, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Anything else on the Welcome Center?
Nope. Go ahead.
That would cover everything, correct? Or would there be the third one? Would that be necessary?
That's a weird one.
Yes.
I don't think it would hurt to make a recommendation on that. They probably don't see that too much.
How do we want to phrase that one?
So this would be a recommendation to be able to develop the lot in accordance with section 27-1403.1 provisions that the zoning hearing board reviews the building site development plan.
Okay, does anyone wish to make that motion?
I'll move to make that motion. I feel like we're doing the same thing as we just did, but if they want to do it that way, I would move to recommend that they do.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So Nick moved and Marty seconded. Any discussion on this motion to recommend development in accord with 27-1403.1? Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Okay, good luck at the zoning hearing board. Now, our last new business item is the sharing of the 2023-2024 rezoning effort document that we received on Thursday and was published on the website on that same day. I did look, the first time that the Planning Commission had a chance to talk about rezoning was May 2023, so a year later, and a lot of work has been done, and I personally thank the group that had been working on that. If the public reads the document, you'll see on the first page or so, there's a listing of the individuals who were on the committee that crafted this proposal with the consultant. It also lists all of our names on that document, but we have not really played a role yet very much. So just wanted that to be clear, that now is the time for the Planning Commission to solicit citizen input and to make our comments on this document. And I turn it to John to explain to us maybe the expectation that the Borough Council or the staff have of us in navigating this document.
Well, I'm sure everyone's read the whole thing. And no, this is a process. It was initially developed as a three-phase process. We just completed phase one, that being the actual drafting of a document. The overall zoning ordinance as it currently exists is, in my professional opinion, wildly outdated and is very detrimental to development in the borough, insofar that it does not provide developers with enough justification for developments, and it will limit your development potential for the borough. Now, having said that, we present to you a very long document. It's robust in that it has fuller definitions. We've provided a table of many more land uses. And in drafting this document, the working group really evaluated a lot of different development scenarios throughout the borough and in the core area. The result, and I'm gonna have to really escape. The result is also, you will see this document has numerous tables specifically to help guide development, showing patterns that are preferred, additionally showing design types. We're going to then also, and this is the more interesting thing that we've been getting comment on, have a new zoning map. In particular, the map eliminates our current Elm Street overlay district, incorporating the provisions of that district into the underlying zoning. In doing so, we've created different types of commercial districts that will incorporate mixed use. Also looking at our commercial districts, having the old town as the core still remains, but it's been reduced to allow for areas of revitalization and other commercial areas that are not necessarily geared specifically to a more, more of a central business district. So allowing for residential opportunities. And that was something, in my participation in the past 5 months, it's really been stressed, the desire for housing opportunities, making sure that this is not necessarily a plan, but an ordinance that facilitates a mix of housing types for a mix of incomes, and then also allowing for commercial opportunities in addition to our very robust tourism and the college. So allowing for additional opportunities for industrial development, while minor, but also allowing for more scaled commercial opportunities and really trying to, I wouldn't say right the wrongs, but really trying to find a balance for those areas as in our residential neighborhoods that are, I wouldn't say endangered, but there's always an issue with increased commercial opportunities occurring, creating rent increases and creating development challenges for single-family units in general. The plan, as we've established it for the actual, I guess, getting this document to a point where you all are comfortable in recommending its approval to council, we have time. We've discussed having another public forum, either a town hall style or some kind of charrette or even just an open house, to be able to have a controlled dialogue with regards to the document, in regards to the planning efforts. A lot of the language that even I'm hearing, it's very easy to misconstrue development. I think so some of the terms I've read in the paper, high-rise development, things like that, we're not proposing very, I guess, even mid-rise development, but there is increased development opportunity in this document. So there's a real, I wouldn't say fear, but there's a real concern that we aren't going to stick to the issue. So we want to make sure, staff wants to make sure that you all are aware of what you're going to be looking at, reviewing, providing comment on. And I guess the big takeaway for tonight is just a general understanding that this is going to be probably on a next bunch of meetings going forward, but also if there's any specific timeline that you would like to have so that staff can begin preparing for the public outreach.
Thanks, John. I think one suggestion I would make is that there are 5 parts in the plan, right? Or, I mean, in the proposal. And could we identify which parts that we plan to take on at different meetings on the agenda? So when it says zoning plan review or proposal review, we say, and in this meeting, it's going to be general zoning provisions and zoning districts or something. So the public could see that that part of the plan will be discussed at that meeting.
That'd be very wise.
So to your language about controlled discussion, it could organize things a little better.
And also, I think, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but keep you on task.
Right.
Because with something this big, it's going to be so easy to go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. And I'm sure, yeah, I scrolled for different parts that I was particularly eager to look at, but, I needed to do this more methodically with the public. Any other comments about how we might take this up over the next several meetings? Well, before I do that, how many meetings? I mean, does council have an expectation of when they would like to receive our recommendation?
So the MPC has a timeline, basically a shot clock begins once you provide a recommendation for approval. It'll take months for their review processes to be fully realized. Realistically, we would like to see this completed in the summer. Now, does that mean July or does that mean September? I'm probably thinking September. So, in which case, that provides 4 meetings. We could have additional meetings as required, but in looking at this, we could definitely, going through the document from like starting at either definitions or getting into the meat of the districts, it's something that, that shouldn't be an issue. If there are specific topics you would like to discuss, that can be brought to our attention, and then we can, at the next relevant meeting, bring that up.
Then I'll make 2 more comments and then stop and see what others say. The second one would be, in addition to identifying what part of the plan we're going to talk about at what meeting, you mentioned public forum. Is it possible to have a meeting at 6 o'clock or something that is totally only devoted to that, and then we do the business at 7?
Of course.
You'd have to advertise it.
I think that would be better than having the public sit here through our land development plan discussion, and then at the end of the meeting, come to this, and rather have it be first. And devote
That
time
would be
to it.
good practice, because usually what ends up happening is everyone's burnt out by the time we start talking about comp plans and ordinances, so I
So
totally agree.
would the planning commission be able to make time for a 6 PM either at the June or the July or the August meeting, or more than one of those meetings?
I would recommend it be after the June meeting, just to allow for public consumption, because otherwise it will be more of special interest, special language in this.
So do it at the June meeting or the July meeting?
I'd recommend if you're going to have an open house, it'd be in the July meeting.
Okay. So any objection to starting at 6 o'clock in July? Now, is 1 hour of public comment going to be enough? My third suggestion, while we think of that one, is the farmer's market has historically offered opportunities for the planning commission and the council to share things with the public. Would we be able to have a booth at the farmer's market? We did that last summer for a couple things, right?
Yeah, we did it for, this map part for sure. I was there on a Saturday for a few hours. It was when we first proposed the districts, the new districts.
And we would volunteer to help, staff it with whomever. So that's my third recommendation.
We serve you in this endeavor.
Okay, so I don't think 1 hour before one of our summer meetings is probably enough. So what do others think?
This is my opinion. I think if you're going to do that, I think you should do it more than one time.
Yeah.
I don't think you should have, again, this is your call. Just like you get burned out towards the end of a meeting, I think you're going to get burned out, and people are going to get burned out before you get to your regular agenda if you have a 2 or 2.5 hour one-time public comment period. Or public forum, I should say.
So would maybe you do this at July's meeting and August meeting?
Yeah, you're
Or if you wanted to
assuming
do
that
something.
you're not going to cut them off in 1 hour. You're assuming that you're going to allow them
No,
to go
I think
for-
we would cut it off.
Right,
in
so
an
I think,
hour
is that what you're saying, that you might not cut them off? Is that?
Well, I'm just saying, I think everybody's eyes are going to start to glaze over at a certain point if you're sitting here talking about the same thing for 2 hours before you then roll into a regular meeting when you have
Yeah.
plans that you have to review and approve.
I think if we're going to have more than one meeting, then maybe several 1 hour meetings is appropriate
That's what I'm
and
getting
keep
at.
everybody sane.
I would be in favor of, I personally am okay with 6, knowing, I was on the earlier committee with this. I would be very happy to discuss with the public, and I would be in favor of an additional non-regular time as well. That, because I do, you know, if someone can't make Mondays, then we're excluded from the process. And I'm not saying that, you know, you can't, everyone has a different schedule, you can't get everybody, but if we had at least one kind of, maybe a different night of the week, or even on a weekend or something, one opportunity that's just focused on this.
So I think what you're hearing is the planning commission wants multiple
Yeah.
meetings and as much as we can get. And so if you could communicate that to the people who set the budget and advertise things and say it's okay.
So if that's acceptable, then what I can do after this meeting is speak with the borough manager, establish what's feasible, and also the assistant borough secretary to be able to get all of this in a plan, so then giving you a memo saying this is what we're thinking about in terms of meetings, schedule, and if that's agreeable, then we'll go forward with it. If not, we can discuss it at the June
Okay,
meeting.
that'd be great. And because we want to be involved as much, we want to be available to the public as much as possible as they read this plan. And one of the things everyone should just recognize is the work that went into doing all of the graphics, I think. That's the best part of the plan, is you can visualize things. Now, there are things that certainly we're all going to disagree on, but I think the formatting of the plan and the readability of it is really excellent. So please communicate that also.
Will do.
Any other comments about the rezoning effort?
I'll just make kind of a general
Yeah,
comment. So for the zoning ordinance, I mean, everybody looks, I love maps, most people do. You'll look at that a lot, you'll look at the uses, where the zones are, you know, that's the obvious stuff, but there's a lot in there that people don't think about that is kind of the owner's manual for how this works. I mean, when you have a zoning hearing, who all do you have to give notice to? Just little housekeeping things like that that are really not the bright and flashy things, but from an administrative and governance perspective, very important. So I would not gloss over those necessarily. My second overall comment, and I don't think this necessarily pertains quite as much in a borough setting as it does in a township setting, but lots of times people view a zoning ordinance as how are we going to contain this use that we don't want and where can we put it? You know, and kind of shove it into something. And there is that in a sense with any zoning ordinance, but it's also a positive thing because you're saying from a policy perspective, where do we think this use is best suited?
That's great.
You're not just saying, if we have to put it somewhere, we might as well put it here. We're saying, this is what we want to be here. So don't be afraid to look at it from that lens as well.
Thanks. That's great. Thank you. John, at the June meeting then, will we not be discussing this?
We can't, what I envision then is that the June meeting, staff will be able to provide you with the timeline.
Okay.
We can take additional comments that have cropped up in that month after review, if there's anything that we need to address immediately. I mean, going through this document, I've made about 300 edits. So there's going to be things that may be wrong with it. I'm not guaranteeing 100% accuracy with this. There may be some questions that you have that we can get addressed in the June meeting, but I guess really it's going to start up in July then.
Okay, then just to summarize for the minutes, so in June, we'll receive more direction as far as a timeline, what's feasible to discuss, things might have been cleaned up. Then we'll meet in July at 6 o'clock, which is our recommendation.
Yep.
And in August at 6 o'clock, and then you would also communicate that we prefer to have another standalone meeting, as well as perhaps something at the farmer's market. Did I capture all that correctly?
Sounds great.
Okay, any other comments about this? All right, then our announcements are that our next meeting is on June 17th at 7 p.m. I also wanted to share that our July meeting is on July 15th, and I will not be in attendance in person at that meeting, so Nick, you're running that meeting. And I hope to participate in Zoom if that's possible. And then our meeting in August is on August 19th at 7 p.m. So that's our summer, and our summer will be a lot involved with this.
You're in the zone.
And also, the website has both the map and the full document on it. And does it still have an opportunity for residents to write in comments on the website like they used to?
No, comments are received via email on this.
Okay, but it has your email on there on where to
Yeah.
send them?
I couldn't get the Drupal to, so we have a very almost obsolete website, so that's something
Okay.
that
Well,
next go around it'll be better, but there is a possibility for receiving electronic comments. I haven't received comments electronically with the exception of one of the members of the audience. Most of the comments I've received are either in writing or just in passing. Most of them, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of people have more individual concerns about their property.
Sure.
So it's more of just the explaining what was proposed. So we'll present those, I'll be able to present the comments received to
great,
date.
that's
at
what I was
the
going to
June
ask.
meeting.
So our recommendation will be based on what we hear in these meetings, but hopefully also what people email to you. So you would share those with us, and citizens should email you, is what you're saying?
Yes, or it can be provided in just via traditional mail, or we can drop something off if you want it and record it, or we can have a conversation. And that's something, my phone number, it's on the website.
Okay, great. All right, are there additional comments from planning members on anything? Then is there additional public comment? Jen?
Sharon Monahan, West Broadway. I would just like to comment that the timetable seems particularly aggressive in light of the fact that it's summer. You're not going to be here for one of the meetings, and there's an awful lot in here for people to become aware of. So I would encourage the commission and staff to be flexible as we proceed through the process to extend the timeline if need be, particularly since it is parts of it are such a dramatic change to Gettysburg, as Sue Sipperly pointed out earlier tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other public comment? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second? Nick doesn't want to adjourn. Okay. Did you second, Marty?
Sure, I'll second.
All right, John moves and Marty seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, our meeting is adjourned at 8:32. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
So